My name is Tashana Ash, and I decided to do my commemorative speech on the bombing of the World Trade Center, also known to everyone in the world as 9/11. So this event occurred on September the 11th, 2001, and this particular terrorist attack was the first and only terrorist attack that had the highest life rate, like death rate of America. And with that being said, there were a few terrorist attacks on America. You know, you had the Pentagon bombing, the World Trade Center bombing, and that wasn't actually the first bombing of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center was bombed February of 1993. I want to say it was on February 26th, if I can remember right. Yeah, February 26th, 1993. And it was that was when in the article I read, that was the initial day that 9/11 was supposed to occur. They were supposed to bomb the towers from the bottom up, and around they parked the van around the bottoms of the towers, and yeah. And then one guy parked his vans. They parked like two vans on each side of the towers, and then one guy was supposed to drive into a tower, and another guy was supposed to drive into the other tower, and then they're supposed to set off all the bombs around the towers, and the towers were supposed to come down from, like, they were supposed to blow up bottom up and crash down as they did in the 9/11 attack. That is why 9/11 occurred, because the first attempt failed. They actually fixed up the Twin Towers to where it couldn't be bombed from the bottom up. That is why they flew planes into the top portions of the towers, because they couldn't do it from the bottom up anymore, because they built it so that the foundations of the buildings were like bomb proof, bulletproof proof, so they couldn't bomb from the bottom up anymore. The Okay, when the fire departments, the police forces, and the volunteer shelters, like volunteer places around the New York City area, came out to actually clean up the wreckage from the Twin Towers being destroyed, they only found 18 survivors in the pile of rubble, which was like really big. I want to say it was about 1.8 million tons of scrap metal, ash, and human corpses. Yes, 1.8 million tons of all of that put together. And in the bombing, 18 people is not a lot of lives to save when on any given day of the work day at the World Trade Center, there was about 50,000 people in that building on any given day. And there were readings of the cameras on the streets around the World Trade Center that showed that about 40,000 people passed through there every day, through the towers, around the towers, going to and from the towers. So about 100,000 people, close to 100,000 people a day, were near that building, working in that building, anything. So the police forces and the fire departments and the volunteers needed help, so they had to call upon like fire departments, police stations, ambulance services, more volunteers from the area. For, I want to say, it was about 100 miles every direction. Touching states came in to help. There were people, they opened hotlines for people to call in and try to give them a roundabout estimate of how many people they were missing, how many people they needed to look for, specific people they needed to find, stuff of that nature. So another thing Okay, so after the bombing, there was tons of ash, and today, as of like recent times, I looked up a study. It was from 2014 and 15. People in New York City who live in the area, who were alive during the time, who were in the vicinity of the area, the ash still affects them today. Ash from the falling of the buildings and the burning of the buildings and things like that. There was these people. They have respiratory problems, asthma, lung inflammation, and it is because of the thickness of the ash. And I think it said in the study I read that the ash traveled about 20 miles, I want to say, up to 20 miles from the initial crash site. And there were about over 100,000, over almost 200,000 deaths that day. And that was a lot of people who died that day because someone wanted to grab America's attention by bombing the Twin Towers, bombing both the Twin Towers. The first bombing only bombed one Twin Tower successfully. The second one, the bombs didn't go off. The second tower, the bombs didn't go off, so it was kind of like a massive hole from where the van truck SUV thing they were having ran into the building. But those were a lot of lives lost, and there were a lot of sad families. And also another thing, it took the people of New York City and the help that they received up to 9 months to clean up all of the dead bodies, identify those dead bodies, clean the wreckage of the Twin Towers, um, clean the streets from ash and silt, the buildings, to reopen the streets around the Twin Towers, to, and this was sad, but even to go under there and you could see the splatters of where people from the buildings jumped out onto the ground because they didn't want to burn and die, or they didn't want to feel the building collapse on top of them. So that is my 9/11 commemorative speech, and that's it.